Thank you. So while Jan and Jim come up to the panel, I wonder if there's anyone from the FDA that might want to comment? Is Dennis here? Okay. Denise?
FDA, but I'm from USDA, so I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One of the things I wanted to say, going back to earlier in the day about innovations, the National Institute of Food and Ag, NIFA, within USDA has a Sustainable Ag Systems grant, which I think is really trying to get at some of these innovations that we need to really feed the 9.6 billion people we're going to have on the planet in 2050. So these conversations here are really great. And as we focus then in the second part of the morning on these meat alternatives, so I actually work right now for the Food Safety and Inspection System and Service. And so we had the public meetings last year with FDA and FSIS where we talked about these products. And there's an awful lot. There's two things that came out of that I noticed. One was about the labeling. There's still an awful lot of discussion going on about labeling. What are these products going to be called? And that was a huge focus at those meetings. The meat industry, the traditional protein producers, I guess we could term them, are very anti these products being called meat. But that is still an open question, and that we're very conscious of what's going on, but we're waiting to see how this evolves. Going back to the first two presenters, there's so much technology that remains to be worked out that we're still, while we've had these conversations with FDA ourselves, we're sort of in pause mode now, waiting for the science to catch up with the regulatory, which is way down the line. But really, I see these products, I know it was very interesting to see, wow, we could go from like 1 billion cattle down to 14, but I really see them as complements to what's going to be on the shelf. I really can't ever see beef, poultry, and pork going away, but it is good to have these alternatives. And like I said, with 9.6 billion people, we're going to have to be innovative, getting back to where we started. We're going to have to be innovative with what's out there. So I see room for it all on the shelf. There's a lot of questions that remain to be asked, but this is a great place to have this conversation. And so that's just the comments that I had for the group.
Thank you. And I guess in the interest of your lunch period, we will have 5 minutes for additional questions till about 12:30. But please, and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Molly Anderson. I'm at Middlebury College in Vermont, and I'm also a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, which includes several members from the United States, as well as members from all around the world. And I want to make a few comments here. One is that it's really surprising to me that all of the talks in this section on game-changing innovations in alternative food production have dealt with meat substitutes. There's so many other alternative, potentially game-changing innovations that are out there, including social innovations. And I really want for people in the audience to be thinking about social innovations, the kinds of institutional innovations that we can be implementing in the food system. I teach a course on food system innovation, and I always tell the students, start out by asking, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the problem that these innovators are trying to solve? And it seems to me that the problem that the meat substitute innovators are trying to solve is we're not making enough money. And how can businesses make more money? It's not a health problem, a social problem, necessarily an environmental problem. I want to raise one other really important point. There's a report that just came out from the high-level panel of experts of the Committee on World Food Security on agroecology and other food system innovations. That's well worth your attention. It brings up agroecology as really the most significant alternative to the industrial food system that we have in this country and that the United States has been trying to export to other countries. Regenerative agriculture, which Michael talked about, is an example of an agroecological system. It has all sorts of advantages for livelihoods, for health, for environmental impacts, for cultural impacts. And we really need to be talking more about that as an innovation in the food system instead of these technological innovations, which as our speakers have pointed out, have all kinds of drawbacks.
Well-
and they're solving problems that perhaps don't really exist.
We do appreciate your comments, and I hope that you'll be here for the entire food forum, such that some of these topics will be addressed in later sessions.
I will
So we
be.
fully understand the points that you're making and appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, did you have a comment, Jan?
Can I have a
Yeah,
quick?
sure.
Should I turn this on? Sure.
So I would venture to say that there are very important problems being addressed by these products, which, as I mentioned, is the fact that we kill just under 10 billion animals every single year with massive negative externalities on the environment, on the animals themselves, and on labor. And here I would, especially on the question of labor, which seems to be the angle you're coming from in social justice, I urge you to read the Oxfam report, Lives on the Line, and also Vanessa Ribas's book, On the Line, to see how these potentially game-changing innovations are indeed game-changing on questions of labor and social justice, potentially, right? By potentially making aspects of the food system that are particularly exploitative of the environment and animals and labor obsolete. Potentially, right? So I would push back against this being, I think, unfairly read as simply venture capitalists seeking to make money. So I want to push against the boosterism and against the sort of silver bullet approach story and the sort of like Happy Jetsons-esque futurism, which is being sold by the boosters of this technology. But I would also urge you to recognize that the technology is mission-driven and comes from addressing very real ethical and environmental problems. But in a market system, especially a market system like the United States, many of the ways to affect systemic change are, unfortunately, for better or worse, through the private sector. The private sector is the most available mechanism for affecting public change at scale, which brings with it, of course, a slew of other potential problems.
Yeah, and the only thing that I'd like to say, Molly, is this is a topic we were asked to speak on, but I agree with you fully about agroecology and sustainable agriculture. In fact, I did some of the first intercropping research and agroecological research over 35 years ago. So it's been fantastic to see how much that has expanded and sort of become the future. But
Okay, so we have time for one more question. Sorry, Jim, unless, did you have a few? Okay. Thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. I know it's already 12:30, so I'll try to be short. But thanks very much for your presentations. Really, really interesting array of topics covered. So great breadth of material. Just a quick question on, so to what extent do you think that we should improve global livestock practices versus creating more innovative alternatives to meat versus improving behavioral change? So I'm with the World Resources Institute, and we do a lot of behavioral change work, and a project that works with companies, hospitals, universities, and cities to lower their overall food-related GHG emissions. And one of the things that we're working on is behavioral change explicitly, and pushing forward the language work that's being done on making plant-forward foods sound more appealing. So those three pillars, so global livestock practices, innovative alternatives to meat, and behavioral change. Which ones do you think weigh a bit more? Which ones should we focus more on? Thank you.
So I'll try to answer some of what it is that you're getting to, because there is a phenomenal depth to the question which you have. Improvements worldwide for livestock production, phenomenal potential for the future. But there are also very much cultural things that would have to change. And I alluded to it a little bit. I can simply go to India, where an entire population of animals, beef in this case, cannot be touched for cultural reasons. And as a result, you have one of the largest beef and dairy numbers in the world that has a huge impact on their environment. And until you change that entire culture, you will not be able to change that ecological impact of those animals. That said, they are trying very hard to work within that system in order to improve production, such as to make it easier to have more protein. Now, the other is that we can go back to, say, the 1920s and earlier in the United States. How many people know the origin of the piggy bank? Where did that term come from? Can anyone raise your hand? It's actually pigs. They were the mechanism for a large proportion of society to get out of poverty, because you had a ready source of income. I can go to Africa, have been there multiple times, and see this time and time again, whether it's chickens, pigs, cattle. That is a ready source of income for which they can use to raise their standard of living. And it is a huge impact. I mean, we are so blessed in what it is that we had. And I think you alluded to about 6% of our income goes to food. There is so much of the world that 3/4 or more of their income goes to food production. So we are talking very much about apples and oranges here in terms of what it is. And addressing all of those things together, I think, goes back to your question of what it is that we need to do. And trying to have that global context is extremely important in this one.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panelists and say that this really is the beginning of the dialogue that we really must continue over lunch and for the rest of the next day and a half. Thank you.
So we started off the day talking about trade-offs. Well, this is the trade-off between having too little time for too great a dialogue. So again, we'll be engaging in all of this for the attendees. The cafeteria is open. That's where you will get your lunch. For the speakers, for the moderators, and the members of the Food Forum, you will be in the same room, the members' room, where you were for breakfast. Because we, again, have so much left to cover in this exciting topic, please be back at 1:30 promptly. We will start without you, so thank you.